Welcome back, members, to our Caucus of the Whole. We are now gathering for our second training of the afternoon. This is our Rules and Decorum training presented by our House Clerk's Office.
Yeah, you're getting so trained up today. You're all gonna be so pros. You're a pros at everything. All right. We're the House Clerk's Office. We're so happy to be your staff. We're your House staff. We just have a short amount of time. We're going to try to get you out of here as quickly as possible, but all trained up. We're here for you anytime, though. The great thing is that almost all of you have seen this training either from prior trainings or new member orientation. So this is a refresher course of sorts. So we are your House procedural resource. You see a lot of us over the next 2 years. I'm just going to briefly introduce my colleagues by name and title, and then when each of them come up, they can introduce themselves again. We have the awesome job of helping you perform your constitutional function. Our House Clerk Associate is Chris Dittmeyer. She's out on a leave of absence, so thankfully we have Jeannie Lowell as our Interim Clerk Associate. We have Nigel Hicks-Tibbles as our First Assistant Clerk. Courtney Record is our Second Assistant Clerk. Teresa Utton-German is Journal Clerk. And I'm clerk, and here is our, whoopsie, there we are. What we have for you, anytime we sent this document to you electronically, anytime you see any blue underlined material, that's a hyperlink, you can click on it. So there we provided our email, our group email, that will get you to all of us if you use house_staff. And then there we have a website also. So here's what we're going to cover with you today. I won't go through this whole list. It's a lot of ground to cover, but we're going to take you from general principles of legislating all the way down to the nitty-gritty stuff of how the House operates. So the first thing we'll do is just take you through the hierarchy of legislative rules of procedure. Of course, we start with this beautiful document again. Our Constitution controls everything. That's why we always comply with it. Also, it's judicial decisions interpreting this too, because our Vermont Supreme Court is the final interpreter of the Vermont Constitution. Then we have our beautiful adopted rules. We have hard copies in our office if you need a copy of the newest rules. Then it's custom, usages, and precedents. That's basically how we keep doing things over time and interpreting our rules. Then statute. Then adopted parliamentary authority. That's our Masons. And then what's called general parliamentary law. It's like the accepted way of doing things in the legislative branch. So first, let's just talk about some of these general principles of legislating. Won't go through all of these details, but we break it down into 3 main principles. The first one being equality of members. Each one of you is equal to each other. You represent approximately an equal number of people. You're here because of the Equal Protection Clause. Vermonters all sent you here equally to do the job, and so you have equal authority as to the person beside you. Another principle of legislating is order and efficiency. To get 150 of you into this room making decisions, we've got to have rules or else it'll be complete chaos. So thankfully, we have our rules to provide us with order and efficiency. And then the third principle of legislating is debating and voting on specific questions. It relates to order, but it's also, you just got to be listening every time the speaker is going to be stating the question for you to vote on. So you really have to be paying attention to what the speaker describes as the question to be voted on. Does anybody remember the common theme about all 3 of these principles? Anybody from your training? What this demonstrates? It's respect. It's respect. It's respect for yourself as a constitutional officer. It's respect for each other as your equal partners in legislating, and it's respect for the legislative process. And we demonstrate that every day, and you guys are awesome. So we're so happy to work for you. Let's just go briefly through the forms of legislation that you're going to be dealing with. You all know this, but we'll just do a high-level overview. One of the things that you might be seeing this biennium are constitutional proposals of amendment. We provided to you a hyperlink to an overview doc of the process to amend our Constitution. It's set forth, of course, in our Constitution. It's two biennium process. It requires constitutional proposals to be proposed in one biennium and then introduced again, that same proposal, if they made it across that finish line, considered in the next biennium, so that two legislatures get to review these. And then finally, voter ratification if they so choose, because voters, this document belongs to the voters. It used to be under a 10-year time lock, but now we are under more of this 4-year process. But it does go every other biennium. And so it was last biennium that was what we call a proposing biennium. Only the Senate can propose constitutional amendments. That's just what this says. And then if it makes it past the proposed in the Senate, the House must concur. If a constitutional proposal makes it that far, it comes back in this biennium. This is a subsequent biennium. So there are only two constitutional proposals that have made it this far. Those are Proposal 3, which is a right to collectively bargain, and Proposal 4, which is equality of rights. They made it across that finish line last biennium, so they start back over in the Senate. And the only thing that can happen now is concurrence. So the language is locked in. If the Senate concurs in those proposals again, then they'll come over here, get referred to a committee, and then you make the decision, if it makes it out of committee, whether you want to concur again. And if that happens, then it goes to the voters for ratification. The large part of your work here in this chamber together, where we're going to be spending all this time, is the consideration of bills. And that requires the concurrence of the two chambers and then presentment to the governor, who has a part in all acts of legislation. And then the third form of legislation is resolutions. We have 3 types. First, just resolutions cannot control anything beyond the legislative branch. They can control your legislative procedure. They might express your opinions on policy, but they can't control beyond us here in the legislative branch. There's another type of resolution you might want to commemorate somebody. So we've got joint resolutions. Those have to be adopted by both chambers. Then we have House resolutions. Those are things that just control us. And then we have what are called concurrent resolutions. Many of you love your concurrent resolutions. It's a wonderful way to recognize people in your community or commemorate an occasion. And so those get placed on our consent calendar. They don't advocate policy. So it's a matter of commemoration, and you can adopt them without vote. That's why they're placed on the consent calendar. And then once adopted, you can get a ceremonial reading here. It's a nice way to recognize members in your community. And if you do want to schedule a ceremonial reading, you see Courtney in our office. All right, let's take you through an outline of a House session. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie and Teresa to talk about that.
Thank you, Betsy Ann. So I'm Jeannie Lowell, and as Betsy Ann mentioned, I'm standing in for Chris Dittmeyer while she's on leave. So a House session, approximately 5 minutes before a House session is to begin, a quorum bell will ring. The session then begins with either a moment of silence or a devotional. One of my tasks is to schedule devotionals. As the slide, as the slide mentions, it's worth repeating. A devotional is an inclusive homily, life lesson, song, poem, prayer, reading, or musical piece appropriate to the setting. At most 3 minutes long. This helps to set the tone and allows for a few moments of reflection and contemplation. We invite members to deliver devotionals, so please let me know if you are interested in delivering a devotional. You can also send me an email recommending someone you may know who you would like us to invite to deliver a devotional. The rules or guidelines for devotionals are few and simple. The devotional should be 3 minutes or less in length, should refrain from requesting that prayers be spoken in unison, should refrain from discussing political positions, and should refrain from using props. What a devotional can be is moving, funny, entertaining, even inspiring. So I encourage you all to sign up or let me know if there's someone you would like to recommend to be invited to deliver a devotional. Thank you.
Now it's Teresa. All right, moving on. I'll try to go at Mach speed like Betsy Ann. So the next thing after devotion is your Pledge of Allegiance. You've noticed probably it's on Tuesdays and it's usually led by the pages. Then we have bill introductions, and there are two options. One is read the first time and referred to a committee, or placed on the next day's notice calendar for action pursuant to House Rule 48. These are always committee bills. Bill referrals to money committees are up next and are subject to House Rule 35, where they will go to either the House Appropriations Committee or the House Ways and Means Committee. The reading of the joint and House resolutions has three options under House Rule 52: read in full and adopt, read by title and placed on the next day's action calendar for adoption, or treated as a bill and referred to a committee. And then the House concurrent resolutions are adopted pursuant to joint rules 16A through 16D. These are noticed on the consent calendar, which Betsy Ann just mentioned by Courtney on Thursdays. You'll see them on the consent calendar on Thursdays, and adopted on Fridays after both House and Senate have adjourned. HCRs can be scheduled for reading, which you know Courtney, you go see her. There are two opportunities for announcements, you may have noticed, before the orders of the day and after the orders of the day. Finally, the House adjourns until the next legislative day. All right, on to Nigel for committee reports and individual member amendments.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nigel Hicks-Tibbles, the first assistant clerk, and my preferred pronouns are they, them. And we've just gotten a quick rundown of the legislative session, how a session goes. And when the House is not in session, however, much of the legislative work is being done in committees. If a committee chooses to pursue a bill, it will ultimately vote out a committee report, which is the committee's recommendations on a bill, which is in the committee's possession at that time. If a committee report recommends amendments to a bill, the House must vote to approve those amendments. Please note the bill as introduced, including committee bills, are never printed in the calendar, so members must compare the committee report in the calendar to the bill on the website as introduced. Individual member amendments, well, one or more individual members may also offer amendments to a bill or to a committee report. These individual amendments can be submitted to our office. They can either come out as what we call a floor amendment or can be published in the calendar. If it doesn't make the calendar before it gets completed, it can be submitted to us and we will publish it on the House Overview webpage and print hard copies that we then distribute on the table, and we email copies to all the members. So when there's a floor amendment, be sure to check your emails, be sure to check the House Overview webpage. And now Betsy Ann will speak on germaneness.
Just a note here, you'll be hearing this term here during session likely. Germaneness is a principle, it's set forth in our Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure. And this provision provides that a member can raise a point of order for ruling by the speaker if it appears an amendment that's offered is not germane. And that can be germaneness can happen in a committee report and an individual member amendment. So it comes from Mason's and it provides that amendments have to be relevant, appropriate, in a natural and logical sequence to the subject matter of the original proposal, and they have to relate to the same subject. And so we, both here in our chamber and in the Senate, use the principles set forth in the NCSL sample checklist that's hyperlinked there to test germaneness in accordance with that rule of Masons. And so the questions that can be asked if you can judge whether an amendment is germane is whether the amendment deals with a different topic or subject, whether it unreasonably or unduly expands the subject of the bill, if it introduces an independent question, or if it changes the purpose, scope, or object of the original bill. That could subject an amendment to a germanous point of order. I'll just note here, sometimes it is a rule that can be enforced by a member by raising a point of order, but there are other times during session where you all agree that an amendment might not be germane to the underlying proposal, but for whatever reason, efficiency of time, everybody agrees the amendment is necessary, you'll just allow an amendment that it might not be germane to the underlying proposal to be adopted. And that's fine. You can choose to do so. And there will be times when you might choose to do that. Also, I'll just note that we can't challenge the germaneness of an amendment that the Senate sends over on a bill also. If you have questions about germaneness, please come see us in the office. Or if you think an amendment might not be germane, but maybe it's one of those times when the chamber would like to have the amendment go forward, maybe it's a thing to check with your leadership about. Back to Nigel.
Back to me for fun with the nose calendar and action calendar. This is what I do every day. Many of you get tedious emails that I ask you to reply to. Thank you for replying. It's great. So we're going to start with the nose calendar. When you look at the calendar, as it gets published, you'll see that it starts with the action calendar and then proceeds to the nose calendar. We're going to flip that and start with the nose calendar right now. When the committee votes out a committee report, I'll be putting it on the next day's notice calendar to provide the House with notice of upcoming legislation that the House will consider. Note that both the nose calendar and the action calendar do not include the text of a bill as introduced. Again, mentioned it earlier, but this is important. So you need to have both documents, the bill as introduced and the calendar with the amendments, both in front of you to understand how a bill is recommended to be amended. So you're comparing the two documents as you go. Now we turn to the action calendar. And the action calendar, it's also referred to as the orders of the day. It's defined in House Rule 32A and includes bills and resolutions that were on the nose calendar the prior legislative day. Bills that on the prior legislative day were ordered to third reading, and resolutions that were placed on the day's action calendar pursuant to House Rule 52. Again, sections in blue, those are links to the rules. Feel free to look those up if you have any questions or come and visit us. We love talking about rules. It's fun. House Rule 37 provides that it is out of order to interrupt the orders of the day with business that is not on the action calendar. To do so requires a motion to suspend rules and a 3/4 vote of the members present to pass such motion. And now we turn to Betsy Ann for decorum and debate and interrogation.
Thank you. You're just going to get refreshed on this because all of you already know this. So we're just going to go through these principles of decorum and debate. We'll start with the debate first. And here we've just provided them for you in bullet points. One principle of decorum and debate is one member gets to speak at a time. So the speaker will, if there are multiple people that want to be recognized to speak, the speaker will call on them. You have to wait to be recognized by the speaker as our presiding officer. One other aspect that's related to the one member at a time is one of our rules provides that there should not be members speaking audibly to another or otherwise interrupting the business of the chamber. And so you back there might be thinking the Morgans might be talking about a family reunion back there. And you think that you're whispering about your family reunion, but really the acoustics in the chamber here are really interesting. And so you might, I'm just picking on you, Morgans of Milton. You might think that you're whispering, but it's really easy to hear because sound travels so oddly in our wonderful chamber. So just a note here, that could interfere with the debate that's going on. But we'll wait for the invitation to the Morgan family reunion. Another aspect of decorum in debate is everything goes through the speaker. The speaker is our presiding officer. She's like air traffic control up here. And what she's doing up here is helping us maintain order so that everything goes through the speaker. So you have to address the speaker, say, Madam Speaker, even if you're asking a question of another person, we'll get to that in a moment, but everything goes through the speaker as she is helping us maintain order as your presiding officer. Another aspect of decorum in debate is germaneness. So when you're debating an issue, it has to be that question that was stated by the speaker, that specific question that you're voting on. Your debate cannot go beyond the specific question before the body. That's another aspect of order and efficiency. Another principle is what we call no personalities. So what this revolves around is really focusing on the policy that is being discussed, because that's what you're here to do, is you're here to debate and vote on policy for Vermonters. It doesn't matter the personalities behind it. So to help maintain that aspect of decorum, Masons provides that you should never refer to other members by their name. Instead, describe them by their town or their district or their seat or in some other respectful manner. That's why we say member from Stowe, for example. Masons also says don't indulge in personalities, because that's gets away from the policy. Don't impugn motives of the members. Don't use indecent or profane language or participate in conduct that disrupts the orderly proceedings of the body. Another aspect of decorum is separation of powers again, and that makes sense because you are the House, you have your own specific purpose, and our other branches are our equal partners in our state government. So Masons provides that you should not refer to the name of the executive in order to influence the vote. Doesn't matter what the executive thinks, it matters what the House thinks when you're here in this chamber. But Masons does say it is in order to refer to the executive or the judiciary or their opinions with either approval or criticism if it's relevant to the proposal under the discussion. Similarly, don't quote or refer to the vote by which a proposal passed in the Senate. It doesn't matter because you are here in the House, you're a separate body, and it's up to you to decide whether a measure should pass. And also, another aspect of separation of powers is don't debate or discuss a matter awaiting adjudication in a judicial tribunal, because that is up to that judicial branch to decide. So it's not our business to talk about matters awaiting adjudication in the judicial branch. There's also a limit on the same question. Our rule provides that a member cannot speak more than twice on the same question unless the House allows you. And members who have spoken once are not going to be called on to speak again if another member hasn't spoken yet. So everybody gets their turn fairly. Now we'll turn to a decorum in interrogation. Interrogation is such a scary word, but it just means asking questions. So don't be intimidated by the word interrogation. But again, everything goes through the speaker as our presiding officer. So if a member wants to ask a question of another member, they have got to ask the speaker. Mason says it's discourteous and a strict violation of parliamentary rules to ask questions directly of a member. Even if the member is sitting right beside you, you say, Madam Speaker, can the member tell me X question? And you always even orient your body toward the speaker because that helps maintain that order. So here we provided the House practice. You say, Madam Speaker, may I interrogate the member from Chittenden? And the speaker will say, the member from Chittenden is interrogated. And then you would say, Madam Speaker, can the member tell me question? And you can keep asking the member from Chittenden your questions until you get your answers. And then you signal with respect to the member from Chittenden that your interrogation is complete. Usually the House members will use, Madam Speaker, I thank the member. And then that's when the member from Chittenden knows they're off the hook, they can sit down, but then you still have the floor so you can finish any other comments. Relatedly, still on interrogation, there's that germaneness word again. The questions that are asked in interrogation have to be relating to the proposal before the body. So you have to be focused on what the House is considering. There's that language, no personalities again. A question should not be permitted that reflects upon the character or conduct of a member or the executive or another official, because it's not about personalities, it's about policy. And Masons also says it's not in order to ask what course a member proposes to follow. And it's not like in a courtroom where you only ask questions that you know the answer to. It's completely the opposite. You're only supposed to be asking questions you don't know the answer to, because that's the purpose of interrogation, is to get information that you don't already have. That's it. No arguing in your questions, because that's just part of your own arguments, not to get answers from the member that you're interrogating. And you should not use, have statements of fact in your questions either, unless it's really necessary to get your question out there. Then that member in the hot seat in interrogation, you can ask them a question, and if they are the bill reporter, they have to submit to interrogation. If it's any other member, they do not have to be interrogated. And so if the first response doesn't fully answer your question, Masons provides that they can ask a limited number of other questions, but you can't keep asking the question over and over if the member is just trying their best to give you the answer that they have. After a certain point, just for order and efficiency, we got to wrap it up. And finally, just a member having the floor in debate without objection can yield to another member. So a lot of times there will be a buddy system when you're reporting a bill for your committee, for example, and it's a huge bill, and you know that there's this one area of the bill that you might need a little bit of help on. You can have a buddy across the room. So if a member asks you a question in interrogation and you don't know the answer, and you can make eye contact with that member, like, Madam Speaker, I would like to yield to the member from Starksboro. And then the speaker will say, the member yields to the member from Starksboro. And so that buddy can help you out to answer your question in interrogation. Here, we just included a fun slide. Watch the line. Remember, I was telling you about that line between you and the speaker? That's an invisible line there. Our pages are even trained to not break that line because it helps create or maintain our order. All right, going to turn it over to Courtney. We're getting near the end here. She's going to talk to you about our forms of voting.
Hi, I'm Courtney Record, and I'm just going to breeze through the forms of voting, hopefully as quickly as Betsy Ann goes through the roll call. So we're going to start with the voice vote. We've done this already, so I don't need to go over that too much, but I want to note that when the speaker is determining the result of a voice vote, she'll say that the ayes or nays appear to have it. It is between this period and when the speaker announces her determination of whether the ayes or nays do have it that a member can ask for a division or a roll call vote. Once the speaker announces the results of the vote, it's too late to ask for another form of voting. So next is division. So this is a count of members voting by those standing or otherwise indicating their preference. If the vote is taken by division, a member still has the opportunity to ask for a roll call before the results of the vote are announced. And lastly, there's the roll call vote. So a couple notes on the roll call. So we would ask that you remain as quiet as possible during the roll call and vote in a loud and clear voice when your name is called so that we can accurately record members' votes. So for the procedure for a roll call is that the first member alphabetically by last name has their name called and they vote. And then there's about a 3-minute break, could be shorter, could be a little bit longer, to prepare for a roll call, and then the call of the roll continues. So that first member alphabetically sits in a bit of a hot seat as having to go first before the break. So after reviewing our alphabetical list of all 150 members, our first member of this biennium is Rep. Angela Arsenault-Williston. Congratulations. So note that we also, when we are in a break, only members are allowed on the floor. And I'm going to pass to Betsy Ann to confirm the difference between voice vote and roll call.
I just want to note, can you hear me okay? I just want to note, Courtney described when we do a voice vote, the speaker will say, all those in favor, please say aye, and it's aye. All those opposed, please say nay, nay. But when we do a roll call, it's yes or no. Yes or no difference. Please just use yes or no in a roll call. We're trying to go as quickly as we can through a roll call just to get us through our session, and we're trained to listen to yes or no. So when we hear something other than yes or no, it's going to hold up the process, and these ears are going. So I really need you to speak loudly and say clearly yes or no. Thank you.
Hi, back again. Okay, so after all that fun stuff you did all day is the journal. where the journal is required by the Vermont Constitution, Chapter 2 and Title, or Section 9, excuse me. Or you can also find it in House Rule 19. It provides the record of the House votes and proceedings, including roll call votes, and if there are any corresponding vote explanations. This is where we give another gentle reminder that those vote explanations should be infrequent, brief, and decipherable. Please use your best penmanship or send your typed explanations via email to the House Clerk's group. Directly after the roll call, it should be given to us with your name and your seat number printed on it, or we'll be trying to figure out, well, who said that? The doorkeepers and pages will gather the paper explanations and bring them to our office for insertion into the day's journal. If not received on the same day, they will not be printed in the journal, and we will assume you changed your mind and you didn't want it in there. I do tend to reach out to make sure that people didn't forget. So watch your emails, but it's very important you get them in. The journal also includes a record of messages received from the Senate and the governor. However, the journal does not contain statements made in devotions or members' comments made during debates. Remarks made outside of the orders of the day that another member requests be journalized will be included. And please follow the same procedure as vote explanations. You need to get those in to me or to us. We prepare a daily journal for each House session that is available the next morning in either hard copy, and I know it's been an up and down on the bill packets, but we'll get there. But you need to request those in advance to our office. If you haven't done so and you really want paper, let us know. They're also available online on the legislative website's homepage. It's right there. Let's see, the daily journals are then combined and indexed to create 2 to 3 bound journals at the end of the session. This takes us all summer long to put these together. All members are entitled to a free set of these journals when ready. Usually I have them by the end of next session, after they go through the whole printing process and they have to go to the binders. This is what they look like. If you don't know that, there's a big bookcase of them out here if you want to see past ones. But be forewarned that there's 2 to 3 of these. So if you want a set and you ask me for a set, you need to sturdy up your bookcase at home or plan to use them for yoga poses or lifting weights. So, okay. And one final note on the journal. Please review the journal to confirm your vote explanations or remarks if they were journalized. We need to make sure they were translated properly. It's really important because, you know, we sometimes will read rope and you said ride, you know, you just never know. We're reading your editing. So, okay, almost done. Now back to Betsy Ann.
All right, home stretch. We're going to take you out of here with just some miscellaneous house information. The first thing that we just wanted to emphasize, Jeannie, we talked about announcements earlier. The announcements are one of the first things we do during a session. They're on either side of the action calendar, as Teresa to describe that. And I just want to note here that announcements are not an opportunity to advocate policy. That's what bills and resolutions are for, if it makes it that far to the floor. So please, announcements are really for the purpose of announcing things without advocating policy. Another thing is that a member can raise a point of order if there's the member believes there's been a non-conformance with the rules, like germaneness, like we talked about. When a member raises a point of order, just in practice, how it happens, the member called to order should sit down until the speaker rules on the point of order. There are no props in debate. You might have heard this before for your newer members. So you can't, it's really about our words here and listening to the debate, what you're speaking, and not holding up something to try to prove your point. You can have a handout sometimes for our more technical bills. There can be handouts, but we have a process to do that to ensure that they're conforming to the no props. They have to be signed by the member offering the handout. They need to be pre-approved by the speaker and distributed through our office. Dress code. All right, what do you do? What do you wear here to perform your constitutional function? Well, we have a rule on this. It was adopted more in 2022, I believe, to get more gender neutral in our dress code here in the chamber. It's business professional attire. That usually means some sort of jacket. I like to think about it as a separation of powers issue again. Think about what you would wear to appear before the Supreme Court in any sort of capacity. Think about what you would wear if you're on official business with the governor. That's what you should be wearing here as an equal branch of government. I'd say if you have any questions about your business professional attire, your leadership is a great resource to give you some advice. House sessions and committee meetings are live streamed and their proceedings are recorded and posted online. Anytime your committee is actually discussing committee business, it needs to be live streamed. This is a way that we provide public access to what we're doing here. You can use electronics in this chamber. It helps us to reduce paper, but just make note that they need to be used only for legislative purposes when you're in here. They should always be on mute. And also just note that our cameras here on either side of the chamber are pointing at you from the back, so your electronics can be potentially viewed on the live stream. All right, getting the last slide. One of the things we just want to note here is you should not enter the chamber during a devotional or a moment of silence. That's when we're just setting the tone for the day and getting going. So if you didn't make it to the chamber on time and we're in the middle of a devotional or moment of silence, the doorkeepers won't be managing the door and you should not enter until we're over with that. You've got to be in your seat to debate or vote. I know the chairs are not comfortable. You might want to sit in the Senate seats, but you cannot be voting from the Senate seats. For example, you have to be in your own seat to debate or vote. Food and drinks are prohibited here in our lovely chamber, although you are allowed in this chamber to have bottled water, but it has to be capped and kept under your desk when not being consumed. When the House is in session, or including when it's at ease or during a roll call break, members of the public have got to be in the gallery. The Senate seats are only for legislative staff only. When we're in session, all of our guests otherwise are behind you, watching you from the gallery. We have our pages. Our pages are so wonderful. They're wonderful eighth graders. They can pass notes for you. If you do have a note for the pages to pass, just tap lightly on your desk with a pen to get their attention. You hold up the paper you'd like them to pass, and if you're able to, just include the seat number or the room, committee room, if it is known, to help them get it to where it needs to go. One of the things you've been doing such a great job, I just want to confirm that the House recognizes guests and occurrences as one body. It has just more effect and substance when we're all acting together as one body. So you might have a guest to recognize like we did today, and then the speaker will say, will the guest of the member from XYZ town please rise and be recognized? And then that's your cue to clap for that person, all as one body. Or when recognizing the birthday of another member, the speaker will say, happy birthday, member, and then all in unison, you clap together. You wait for that cue so you're acting as one body, because that's what you do in here. And then finally, the House is in session until the speaker gavels you out. Please don't start packing up until you hear this bang from the speaker. And bang, we're done. All right, thank you.